So this is Dean with the Two Party Podcast. We're here with Hannah and Bethany. Is it Keem or Kami? How do you pronounce it?
Kime.
Kime. So I was totally wrong. So I just wanted to introduce them. They've got a great story to tell, guys. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and I'm going to go ahead and let them start telling their story. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, so we are sisters. We're college age, so we're both full-time students in college. I'm Hannah, so this is my voice.
I'm Bethany, so you know my voice.
Okay.
And we are the women behind HeartCharged. We're mainly based in Instagram as an account that's growing. We just hit 1,000 followers, and we started January this year.
Awesome.
And yeah, our goal really, which has been ever since we've been diagnosed, which has been 7 years. We both have the same condition because it's genetic. It's hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which we'll get a bit more into, like what that is and what that means for us. But our main goal has been to build a community, to have patient-to-patient connection, and as well as to advocate for heart screenings, because our lives was saved by a heart screening. So that's really our main goal, is to have that mandatory for all people, because the deaths that happen with undiagnosed heart conditions are preventable through heart screening. So
and I think that's really important to mention that as we discussed before we started recording, I've had some heart issues in the past with both my valves. And one of the things my doctor had originally told me is while I was born with this condition and while it was kind of a genetic situation, my lifestyle was not helping it. And so what you just said, it being preventable, is what a lot of people I don't think understand, is there a lot of the things you may be born with, it's not the end of the world. It's something that with a change in lifestyle or diet, certain things you can do to prevent. And screening for sure. I mean, I had to go when I was first diagnosed, I had to go every 3 months. I had to have a follow-up visit to check my heart because my valves were failing. Yeah, so preventative is important.
No, it's so true, and exactly what you said, like with the whole lifestyle part of it, like a huge thing for us, though, like there's no cure to our condition. The big thing they push is like stay hydrated, drink a lot of water, that's going to help. So there is those things that come with like these conditions we're born with. We get it. We're all about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like stay hydrated because it helps. It makes such a difference.
It does. So when were you first diagnosed, and how did it all come about? Tell me that story.
So we both got diagnosed about 7 years ago in September, actually. So we just kind of celebrated 7 years from being diagnosed. It all started when our aunt, my mom's sister, went to a checkup, and she's had a valve replacement as well. And she went to the appointment, and they kind of said, oh, well, that makes sense because of your condition. And she was like, oh, what condition is that? I haven't heard of it. And they explained, well, you have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So then from there, she did some research from being diagnosed, because this was very new to her. And then she found out that it was a genetic condition. So she immediately called my mom and was like, you need to have the children checked because this is something genetic. We don't know who could have it. So it's very hard to get an appointment with the pediatric cardiologist.
Yes.
And so my mom called, and from that, like after talking to my aunt, she got an appointment about 6 months later, which is kind of scary because hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is the heart condition which takes most of our young athletes. So if you ever hear a story of like an athlete dropping dead on the field, or
so when you put a high strain on the heart is usually when it's the worst effect.
Exactly. And we're both dancers. Hannah was playing on basketball.
So you're both athletic.
Yeah, exactly. So my mom gets an appointment like 6 months later from that phone call from my aunt, and my mom had a prompting to take Hannah first. So Hannah goes in, and they find out that Hannah has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and immediately like her world has changed. And then my mom's like, well, I have 8 other kids. I needed like all the ones that are down here, like living. She was like, we need to get them checked. And they're like, we have in a couple months. And my mom is like, no. We need an appointment now, because if she has it, who else could have it? Like,
right.
So then she does what moms do best, and she's like advocates. She's like, I need that appointment. So she gets us our appointment, and I had just decided that I was going to dance full time with Miami City Ballet in their pre-professional program, and I was going to leave high school to like follow my dreams and do it all online. And then I get diagnosed as well with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So that's how we both got kind of the diagnosis story.
Yeah. And even our mom, like through us getting diagnosed, found out that she had it too. Like she went her whole life.
So it's genetically, it's throughout your family.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we have a brother, so there it goes in our family, like 6 boys, and then me, Hannah, and we have a younger sister.
Okay.
And the brother right before me has the gene of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, but he doesn't express it.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so mainly it's looking like maybe for the most part it kind of, even though he has the gene, it mainly is falling on the women's side of the family genetically. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
We think it's something. Yeah.
But our little sister.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of
it.
odd. I mean, because with a lot of different things you hear genetically, it's usually like it'll skip a generation, or there's different things with each thing genetically. But with this, it's kind of odd that it's just sticking to one side of the genetics family.
Mm-hmm. And then our younger sister doesn't have it, but then us two both have the condition, but we express the condition very differently as well too, which is like interesting too. And our aunt expresses it different than our mom, and so it's just crazy that this condition, how like it's just a little bit different in all of us, but it's the same genetic mutation that's in us.
Is it something that you know or feel? I mean, does it cause issues where you actually have like events where you have to stop, or you really catch yourself? I mean, is there what is the kind of the red flags of it?
So with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, actually the thing is that it goes undiagnosed because it's usually asymptomatic. So there's no symptoms behind it. So the breakdown of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is that your left ventricle wall is thicker, so that when your heart is like beating so fast, like during physical activity especially, it makes it very hard for the blood to get into the heart. So then your heart is just beating rapidly and it's just like
circulating
out. There's no exactly without circulating blood. So usually it usually goes like we had no symptoms really, but the symptoms that they say that they look for is like passing out, like lightheadedness, dizziness.
Right.
But usually sometimes they say like, oh, you passed out, oh, let's check your blood sugar levels, or like, oh, your dizziness because you haven't eaten, and they don't sometimes associate that with these heart conditions.
So what do you guys I mean, you know, you said you were in dance and stuff. What are you guys going to school for?
So I'm actually still going to school for dance.
Okay.
I feel just the way that the condition has expressed to myself, I have a defibrillator now, which allows me to keep dancing and like pursuing those dreams. So that's very nice.
And I'm going to school to study film. Yeah, because I love performing arts, but I took more of the route because when I got diagnosed in that appointment, they told me I had to stop everything I was doing because the thickness of my wall was so severe that they're like, we don't want you like exerting yourself at all. And they told me they're like, the sports you can play are like shuffleboard and golf. And I picked up golf and I was like, I don't have the time commitment for this. Like invest, you're really good. I was like, so, but it ended up being exactly, I loved film, I loved television, I love that part, I love acting. So
more as a precautionary, just follow a career path that's safer for your health.
Right. I mean, the stress probably no, but you know, I love it, and it ended up being what I wanted to do anyway. So I would have ended up down this path, I think, even without a heart condition. So I'm glad that I can do something that I love and not feel like, oh, it's only because I have a heart condition.
Right. Well, yeah. And I mean, you know, you look at things in your life. I mean, I'm 44 years old. I'm an old man. So, you know, I've done a lot of things in my life. I've wore a lot of hats. I've been fire ranger, fire and safety. I've worked construction for 27 years. I own a business now doing construction. I do the podcast. I got my degree in computer electronic engineering. I've done a lot. I mean, my resume is so high. It's like, I don't even know what to list on it sometimes. So it's just one of those things, like I've done so many things in my life, but you got to find something you're passionate at. Like you said, I mean, they told you couldn't do it, and you know you've got something you need to for your health, take care of yourself. So you find something you're passionate at. I found later, now that I'm, getting older, I'm tired of construction. I'm tired of physically going out and working on with guys that are 20 something years old out working me now. And I'm like, I'm just too tired to do it. So I'm like, I'll let them do the hard work, and I'll start phasing into something where I can use my engineer's degree. I can actually utilize my gift of gab. I like to talk. I like to meet people. So that's kind of why I started the show, to do that. But that's what you got to do. You got to find your passion, and I have hobbies I do. I mean, there's tons of things I like to do just as hobbies. And that's kind of what I've learned with my heart, with my valves and stuff. There's things I can't do. My doctor told me, even though I'm cleared and I'm good, he's like, he gives me this little bottle of nitroglycerin, and he goes, you have to carry that with you. So with my condition, what I was getting was, it felt like a heart attack, and I would literally seize up. I'd literally get what they call like a chest clutcher. And I'd literally feel like I was having a heart attack. And what it was is my heart valves would literally stop. So it would just literally have a moment where it would just stop beating. And that was the pain I was feeling that made it feel like a heart attack. And it would stop for anywhere from 10 seconds to a minute. So literally for a minute, and sometimes it would drop me to my knees. And so he gave me this little nitroglycerin bottle with these little pills, and you drop them on your tongue. When that happens, he's like, take that, and it'll start stimulating the heart to go, So he gave me that to carry, and I don't carry it. My wife she yells at me a lot, like, where's your stuff at, And I still, luckily I've changed my diet. I've changed a lot of things health-wise. I don't get that feeling as much anymore. I do get the feeling, and I know when the valves are skipping or off beat. So I get kind of a little flutter, but I don't get the clutching anymore like I used to get. And I think a lot of that I kind of ascertained to better exercise, better diet, me taking care of myself better now. And I think that kind of helped a lot. So since this has all gone on, what have you guys done with the program that you're doing to advocate for it?
So we decided to become a nonprofit. So we just became one actually last month, like filling out the whole paperwork to become official. And the huge thing that we started off with was in January was building that patient-to-patient support, because we feel extremely blessed that we had each other and like our mom and our aunt to go through this condition together. But there's so many people out there living with these heart conditions that they don't have anybody else to like lean on for support, and they're like, people just don't fully understand. So after I got my defibrillator implanted, it's almost been 2.5 years ago, I was like, I want to start an Instagram page some way for all these people to like come together and to meet. And we just like weren't finding any. And then I kept telling Hannah, and we're like, let's do it, let's start it. And then it was kind of like, does anybody really care though? Does anybody need like to hear our story? And right before we were about to launch the Instagram in December, I got a message on my personal Instagram page from a young girl who's about our age. And she's like, hey, I just got diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. They want me to get a defibrillator. I'm freaking out. I don't know how I'm going to look with this device, because it's pretty big, like my defibrillator, like
right.
You can see it sticking out of me. You have like a couple scars, and especially for like young girls. And
yeah, it's absolutely scary, I'm sure.
It's super scary, and you don't you have to like us too, like we're not even supposed to wear like wired bras, so like, and they don't tell you all of that sometimes, and you have to completely change some things about
your whole lifestyle and everything you do, it changes, right?
Exactly. So I started talking to this girl, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I do need to start this. We do need to like go on and like create this page. And so I ended up talking to her so much, and she ended up getting the surgery and the defibrillator, and it was just like amazing. So we started in January, and the people we've met and the like connections and the support, and just hearing like, thank you so much for this page, because I've never found anybody like this. I'm always searching. And like, there was a guy in Scotland, he's like, I've never met anybody else with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. This is so cool to connect. So it's just been like, the whole reason we started was to for sure build that patient-to-patient support, but also to bring awareness to heart conditions, and that these are conditions that are preventable, because every 3 days a young person under the age of 25 drops dead of sudden cardiac arrest, and it's too scary, and we can prevent these. And so that's the whole thing, is to build the patient-to-patient support, but as well as bringing awareness to these heart conditions.
So through that, you're building relationships with other patients. and people diagnosed, you're building a community per se that wasn't there, which is great for not just you guys. I mean, you know, I just I went live yesterday on my personal page, which I don't normally do, and I speak a lot about. And I always encourage this. I try to encourage a positive message in helping others, and in general, you know, kind of a blanket statement. When I say helping others, I mean like something as simple as holding a door for someone in public, something as simple as giving a smile, a gesture of giving a compliment to somebody. It doesn't have to be flirtatious. It's just giving somebody a compliment on their outfit, their car, whatever it may be. You don't know where a person is in life and where their mind state may be. And just by giving a simple gesture, holding a door, giving a compliment, a smile, you're in the drive-through, pay for the meal for the car behind you and drive off. It doesn't have to be something of recognition, but I've always looked at helping others, and what you're doing with that, you're creating a community where you're able to help. It doesn't just help you, because when I help others, it helps me, and that's why I do it. It doesn't just make me feel good, but it lets me know that I'm not just being selfish throughout my life. I'm not leaving a legacy of just everything I did in my life was for me. And that's why I enjoy helping people and lifting them up. And I do a lot of local business promotion and stuff like that, just to help local businesses. And I don't charge for my time. I just do it, you know. And with what you're doing, you're helping build a community with patients, which in general helps you because you're patients. But at the same time, there may be a lot of women out there or men that suffer from it that have no idea, like you said. And now you have a community where maybe they're sitting around and they're lonely, or they're just like, man, I have this problem, and nobody knows anything about it. Maybe they're depressed, and now they have a place to go.
Exactly. We actually had our first like virtual meetup on
Nice.
September 29th. So it was Tuesday, because it was like World Heart Day. We're like, let's do a virtual meetup. We got people from England, from around the United States. It was super cool. We've never met each other, and it was amazing because one of the guys had posted about it, and he was like, we have never met each other, but there was no like awkward like silences or anything in the conversation. It was just like a group of people who truly like cared and understood for each other.
Right.
Like, we were best friends, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we just sat down and talked and understood. And like, I think we talked for like over 2 hours on Zoom talking, and it was
awesome.
So cool. It was an amazing experience. Exactly. It helped us. We were learning so much. They were learning so much. An amazing experience.
Yeah, I have to completely agree with you. I think like the being kind to others is like, you can do it in any way you want, you know, like smiling at someone, giving compliments, you don't know how much it changes their day.
Yes.
And so I think that it's been really, because after I got diagnosed, I've liked doing like volunteering, doing grassroots activism, like politics and stuff like that. And so I like turned to that, and I started like researching about legislation, about bills being passed here, but going and sharing my story with people. But I almost felt, because I was in my own community, I felt like an echo chamber.
Right.
I was like talking, but I wasn't finding anybody I could relate to.
Yeah.
And a lot of people too, what we found and why we wanted to make this page is the girl who found Bethany's post. She's like, when I go and look up like Facebook groups, I find like a bunch of old people, and like people like get that stigma that heart conditions aren't only something that affects you know, old people, but it's something that affects young people, you know. And like, actually cardiomyopathies take more lives than childhood cancers do. And
that's crazy. See, I never knew that. That's insane.
You don't know that because, again, it's also the thing of like, we look healthy. Again, the thing is like, you don't know the battle that someone's going through. You don't know, like, hey, when you're saying take the stairs because it's a healthy option, I'm like, I'm going to be winded when I take these stairs, but you don't know, because I look like a normal regular.
Yeah, you two look totally healthy, like normal college students, like totally.
Well, because we'll like go to like Universal Studios, and we'll have like a medical pass or whatever because we can't do stairs, and then we'll hear people in the line be like they look healthy, like what are they saying, like
like you're cheating the system or something.
Yeah, and you're like, I'm really not, like
like I passed out in these lines before, so like it's not like I'm making anything up,
right know? And you know, it's funny because you know, for a while when I was going through my heart issues, they issued me a temporary pass. I grew up, by the way, Florida's my home, so I lived in Tampa. I worked in Miami for many years. My dad was actually, he passed away. He was down in Boca, down in that area. But I grew up basically in Tampa, Orlando. I ran every street in Florida growing up. I was a little hoodlum and ran all those streets and caused all kinds of problems. But I love Florida. Florida is, even now, I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but Florida is my home. It always will be. But they gave me a temporary pass, and I went through the same thing. I would go, and I mean, I've always been, I used to be a lot skinnier than I am now, but I literally, I go in these lines and stuff, and people are looking at you and just kind of judging you. And it's kind of like, I understand, I get it. Like, you see somebody and you're like standing in line at 2 hours in Disney, and I get it. You're waiting on a ride, and then you got somebody who just walks right past you, and they're half your age, and you're like, seriously? But, you can look at, there's so many people in the world we pass daily. You can look them right in the eye, you can look them up and down, and they don't show a sign of anything. But that person could have a medical condition, they could have a colostomy bag, they could have had a kidney transplant. Let alone they could just be suffering from something mental. That a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of mental disabilities that people have, as far as depression even, and psychological issues. But yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to the fact, like, being in line and being judged, like I'm walking past everyone and going, sorry guys, I do have a condition, and people are just like looking at you like, yeah, right, you're whatever. Somebody gave you a pass,
Yeah. That's so true.
What do you guys now what do you guys have to deal with, like, on a daily basis, as far as school? I mean, how does that change? I like that you're getting involved in legislation and stuff, and I think for both of you, for the group and the community, that's an awesome thing. When you have something like this, like you said, that's not really well known, and you guys are now creating, you're basically starting the foundation of something for patients that are dealing with heart issues. What do you have to deal with in daily life, and what is some of that you would tie into, like, legislation maybe, that you'd like to see change?
Great question. So we both take medication. Because mine is more severe than Bethany's, I do take more medication. At one point I was taking like 12 pills. I was living in Utah, actually, to serve a full-time mission for my church.
Awesome.
And I don't know if it was the elevation or what, but there was like, I had to be on all these medications, and as like a 20-something-year-old, you don't want to be taking like a bunch of pills, because you're like, I feel old. Why am I taking all these pills? But I think we, like, on our page, we talk about like blue days, red days, like your good days, your bad days. And I think like we try to live as like most normal as we can, like try to
you have to.
Right. And I think some days you wake up and you're just not feeling as good, and like that kind of does affect your day, because it's not like, hey, I'm not feeling well. You're like, okay, my heart is off, and it's like a vital organ for your body. So it affects a lot of things that affect, like, your mental state, your physical state, your emotional state. Like, hey, I'm feeling like tight chest pains right now. I need to take a break. I need to relax. But every day it's pretty normal, everyday life, just without, like, of course we take medication, and we do it. We try to, enjoy. That's our whole thing as well, as like being grateful for what we have, that we're not looking at it like a burden, but that we're embracing it. Because we found a lot when we embrace what we have. I realized too, when I would be like, share about my condition, a lot of other people would come up to me and tell me about something else that they had, whether it was not like a heart condition, but maybe they had something else, that they would feel confident, because they're like, oh wow, like, you have something I know that I can share with you. Because a lot of people do get self-conscious about, oh, I don't want to tell people. And it's hard, because I think being young adults, people are like, hey, let's go, running, or let's go do this, or things like that, which, like, I'm like, ooh, okay, do I want to go running with you and go hiking with you?
Right.
I know that I'll probably be done for the rest of the day, and like, ooh, and exert myself. Like, it's not like going to be something like super enjoyable, because I might be like catching my breath or something like that. So I think that's sometimes been hard, because again, you're like, I don't want to be the person who's like, actually, I can't do that, like the party people were like, oh, I really want to. And so trying to find that balance of, embracing it and not feeling, super down when sometimes you maybe can't go out with your friends or do something like that, or find something that you all could enjoy, that, not going to risk your life at doing.
Right.
And cause you to have some like heart arrhythmias or irregular heartbeats, for it, but enjoying life to the fullest that you can.
And it's important that you have to. I mean, you're young, you've got to enjoy life. You know, and I know obviously you're young, you want to enjoy life. You want to go out there, you want to be able to go out there and run with them and hang out with the people that are just doing things you want to get involved in. But, you know, I know from my experience, it was just one of those things. I knew I was limited on a lot of things. I exercise was one of them. He's like, don't get your heart rate too high. The other thing is just being susceptible to infections, being susceptible to my immune system being lower. I was diagnosed with like Epstein-Barr syndrome when I was younger, so I already have a compromised and chronic fatigue and all that. I already have kind of a compromised immune system to begin with. And he was like, you can't catch anything. You know, when you get a flu or a cold, you're not the average person that, you know, you just go stay home from school. If you get an infection, it gets into your valves, it can deteriorate the valves, thus causing them to break off. And so there's just so many things you do have to transition and change. What is something like what's the next step for you guys as far as like with this group growing and hopefully bringing education and resources to other patients, obviously, what would be the next step? Like if you could take this to say a state level, or say you could take this to, like you said, legislating even, what kind of maybe, I guess, awareness or proclamations could you maybe bring to the awareness of the state, even on a state level?
So our big thing is making like heart screenings mandatory in children checkups. It's crazy to us because like the heart is such like a vital organ, and
It's almost the vital organ next to the brain.
Exactly.
I mean, it really is, because if the blood's not flowing, there's nothing else working.
Exactly. And so we've actually been doing a lot of research because we want to put out like some PSA, like public service announcements. And our big thing that's crazy to us is that we've made vision screenings mandatory for children. We made hearing screenings mandatory for children. We made cholesterol screenings mandatory for children. Where are the heart screenings? Why are they not mandatory? It's crazy. And if every 3 days somebody under the age of 25 is dropping dead because of something that could have been preventable by a simple heart screening, why are we not doing it? Mm-hmm. And that's our big push, is that we're trying to build a research. Like, for example, Italy is very big on making heart screenings mandatory for athletes and such, and they've worked it out that they make everyone, I think it's like every year in their physical, get these heart screenings. And we, as the United States, we haven't adopted it yet, and we just think like, why not? And then people are saying like, oh, the false positives, but it's a 15-minute EKG, and then maybe it's one more echocardiogram after, but that's saving your life, you know? So it's like, why are we not doing it? So that's our big push, is like, the heart is keeping us alive. We got the vision, we got the hearing, we got the cholesterol, we need the heart screening. So it's just doing a lot of research to kind of back up what we're here to say.
And I think especially on an early stage, like you said, to get those screenings and have something like that put into legislation, or put it into working with medical programs or heart institutes to try to put that for early detection. Now, real quick, before I know you got something to say there, Hannah. Real quick, is there now, as far as like, where am I going with this? As far as starting early, is there a certain stage that's best? Or, I mean, can you basically give an infant a heart check to see an irregularity, or does it take till you develop into an older stage?
So that's another part of the research we're doing. So actually most of the United States has adopted that all newborns have to get a heart screening.
Okay, which makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Within like 24 hours of being born, but our condition, we probably, like, I had a hole in my heart when I was younger, but they took me and did the whole screening, but nobody saw the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy in my heart. I didn't get diagnosed till I was 17. So that's the other part of the research that we're doing, is like, is there an age that it really stands out, like that you can really see it? And we just think like, at least right now we're kind of seeing like maybe like around 5 years old.
Right, or maybe several tests. Maybe from an infant stage to 5, and then from 5 developmental to 8, maybe 10. Exactly. Maybe that's how it should be.
For sure. And then even with Hannah, like both of our heart walls have gotten thicker over our lives, and Hannah went through like a growth spurt, and it went even thicker.
Right.
So that's like, sometimes they maybe have, like, they didn't see it when you're younger, but then you keep checking. So the huge thing is like, maybe if we can make some type of guideline or some mandatory that you have to have so many by a certain age, or such, but it's like all the research we're doing. We're like, just have one every year.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that makes sense, because things change. We know biologically things change. I mean, like you said, you can have a hole in your heart, or as you're developing from teens up to being an adult, your heart's a muscle. It grows just like the rest of your body and your muscles. So yeah, why not have a screening every year? But I know those, some places that's not affordable. Some people that don't have insurance or whatever. I guess part of advocating would be trying to make it affordable, trying to make it available to everybody, and maybe even just make it available to everybody on a 1-year basis, or maybe every 2 years, everybody gets a mandatory if they want to. That would be great.
And we're blessed that we have actually a children's hospital down here that does free screening. So like if anybody's listening in like the Miami area, Nicholas Children's, if you don't know, does free heart screenings.
Nice.
And because the people I actually spoke with, like the doctors, like to our school board about the importance of having heart screenings. And again, what's like with us is that we are the success story from a heart screening, because the people I was speaking to were parents who had lost their children because they didn't have a heart screening. And so it's just a good reminder, like that's why like our whole heart's in it, our whole like, heart is in it, ashes, because like my life was saved. I know the date I would have died if I didn't have a defibrillator implanted to shock me back to life. And so when people tell me about the false positives, or like, what if my kid can't play sports anymore? I'm like, hey, I've been there, but your life isn't over. And like, would you want your life to actually be over? Or you would just have to change a few plans and like
how important is the sports as opposed to being able to live and actually do anything? Yeah.
Exactly. And there's like so many incredible organizations that are trying to make those EKGs like not like affordable, but also like
wholesome, like you have people who host it, that they could come maybe
kind of like when they do a blood drive, but do a heart screening drives.
Yes, exactly. Okay. That's incredible too. But we're like, and that's amazing, and they're saving lives that way too. We just like heard of there's a organization called Who We Play For, and the kid had to get like a heart screening, like part of a physical to join like an athletic club, and then they detected a heart condition on his EKG, and the family was able to get it because Who We Play For does free EKGs, which is like amazing. But that kid only probably found out about it because he had to get that physical for school. What about if that wasn't mandatory? So that's why we're like, we need to push mandatory screenings and children checkups.
I would agree. I would agree. The earlier that you can detect, the better.
Yeah. And even because there is with like the Florida High School Sports Association, they do like, okay, have a like most athletic people, you do a heart screening. But what about kids who aren't being athletic, like I actually, like it was crazy how I had like stopped dancing right before I was diagnosed, just because I was like, hey, I don't want to dance anymore, I'm gonna do something else. And that was like almost a great preparation, because if I was staying that active, it would have been even more heartbreaking knowing the news, like, hey, you were gonna do it. And my doctor was like, I mean, I could probably play poker with my doctor, because she was like, I had a good face, right? How active you were, you didn't drop dead. I'm grateful. I'm glad I didn't show that in my face, that I was like, oh, okay, you were playing like on 2 basketball teams and 2 dance teams, okay, and you're still alive, okay, we're grateful for that. So it just shows you like, hey, like sometimes that person could have something but they're not playing sports, they're not active, and they wouldn't know either, because again, it's asymptomatic. You don't, unless the symptoms show more when you have something severe, like, oh, I passed out, was that heart related, or I really had a bad tightness and pain. But we went our whole lives really going and doing it, and you think like, oh, I exercise, my heartbeat is fast, like that should be normal, because you assume, okay, it's elevated, but then you're like, but how fast is bad, because
what's the highest, right?
Hey, maybe it was kind of fast, but we didn't know, because like everybody else around you was like, oh, it's 90, and you're like, oh, I guess mine is 92, because I think I lost count because it's beating, but no one's telling you, oh, hey, you should have a heart screening, I would tell you.
Right before like being diagnosed, and the importance of like checking your pulse or whatever, and I remember like being in a PE class for school, and she's like, okay, check your pulse, and then I remember like counting, and it was like 108, 80, I want to say, or something. And then everybody was like 90. And I was like, oh, I think I counted wrong.
Right.
Okay, yeah, like 92. Like, you don't realize. Like,
Yeah. Like my heart's jumping out of my chest, guys, you know?
Yeah, that's why it's weird. You're like, oh, I guess it's just normal. And I think as well as like a child, like growing up with it, like you get normal to it. It's again, like sometimes you're like, I'm not taking my pills because I get so, I'm like, I'm lazy. But you're like, hey, I should be, because you get so used to it because you've lived so long with it. And that's the opposite of like, okay, if you don't get your heart screened, sometimes you're just like, oh, that's how my heart is, And
yeah.
My mom told our pediatrician, like, hey, we just found out my sister has it. Like I've had some fainting episodes. None of them were heart related. Thank goodness, it was all dehydration. But they're like, hey, we have family history, which is the number one cause for people to get heart screenings, is like, oh, your family has it. We need to check the other people.
Mm-hmm.
The pediatrician he was like, I don't think you guys have it. But again, he's not a specialist. Because then I go to my specialist and you're like, you got it.
And that's a huge difference, is because I know when I was originally going to my primary, I was just like, he's, oh, well, you may, I kept telling him I'm having these pains. Sometimes it drops me to my knees. I'm at work and I'm literally collapsing on the ground, holding my chest, and they're calling an ambulance, and the ambulance picks me up. And by the time the ambulance gets there, it passes. And they're like, well, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just, fluke thing. Maybe you had a heat stroke. And my primary doctor's just telling me like, oh, yeah, it's probably just a heat stroke. You do construction, you're just working too hard. And I'm going, no, I've worked hard my whole life and I've never had a problem where I fell to my knees. And this was when I was about 28, and I'm like, there's nothing normal about me collapsing on the ground. And I know when I work really hard in the sun and I work really hard on a construction site, I know when it's time to take a break from a heat stroke. And I know the signs of a heat stroke. I said, this isn't a heat stroke. When I by default grab my chest and fall on my knees, it doesn't really have anything to do with a heat stroke. And, they were like, well, and then it took me probably 3 or 4 visits of this incident happening before my primary took it serious enough to send me to my cardiologist to get a workup with a specialist. And that was the scariest part. And then, I had so many other diagnoses from the Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue, all these different things in my life that, my primary at the time was kind of like, well, are you really have these things, or are we just kind of making things up as we go? And I was like, nah, even if I was a child making something up, or even at that age, an adult making things up, it would still be your job to kind of check.
Exactly.
Or refer me to somebody to check. It should be serious enough that you look into it to at least rule it out. And so when he finally did, I was kind of like, I was surprised. And second, when the cardiologist actually found that the aortic was going bad, I was, I thought maybe it was just my mitral valve, which I already knew was a problem. And he said, no, this is your aortic, and this is bad. This is the one, when it goes, you're dead. And I'm like, wow, okay. So it's kind of like, life-changing moment at that time, but it was kind of interesting that it was so difficult just to get to that point, just to get to the specialist, to even be able to be seen. And, it wasn't about, I had insurance. I wasn't worried about money. I wasn't worried about insurance. I wasn't scared. I wasn't worried about paying out of pocket for whatever it took. I just wanted the problem to go away. I didn't want to fall on the ground and clutch my chest. I didn't want to have the pain. And so when I finally did, I found a great, the cardiologist I first went to was just a great guy. He was in Clearwater, Florida. And just a really good doctor. And he took a look at it. He did the stress test, where you get on the treadmill and he makes you just run. And I used to run, this was probably when I was mid 20s. I would do half marathons, and I'd run about 12 miles a day, almost every day of the week. I did it for a while. I just got into this thing, and I boxed for many years, so I had to run then, but I always hated running. And so he's like, yeah, we're going to do a stress test. He puts me on a treadmill and gets me running. I'm like, this is horrible. This is the worst. Yeah, this is horrible. Why do you have me on a treadmill if I have a heart condition? I'm trying to get out of it. I'm trying to tell him, like, I need to get off this treadmill. But, he did it. And he did for several weeks straight, we did stress tests. Every time, certain times a day, he'd bring me in. He actually took the time, like most patients would go in, they'd do a stress test. He'd sign off on it, done deal. With me, he knew there was a bigger issue. So he'd have me come in at certain times, and he'd call me random and say, hey, I need you to come into the office, or where are you at? And I'd swing in, and he'd throw me on that treadmill, make me run. And I'm like, he goes, well, this is how we're going to find it, because yours is so intermittent that he goes, the only way I'm going to really see something is if we catch it. And so that's kind of what we ended up having to do. And that's when he really was able to see it. And then we got more imaging, and he was actually able to see where the valve itself was deteriorating. So it's just scary that again, you have to work so hard just to get to see a doctor. And like you said, Hannah, if you're overlooked, if a doctor, or you're at a young age, or you have a family, maybe you don't have health insurance or something your family can't afford, by any chance, if you're missed or overlooked, I remember hearing the stories. There was a gentleman that died on a basketball court, a young teen. I remember hearing the story of a guy that running track and field, running a track, that passed out, and I believe it was probably a similar situation.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I just like admire that you kept pushing though to like make sure that you got it checked out and you were seeing the doctors and making sure you're here like heard, because I think so many times we get like, oh yeah, then it is nothing, like it's nothing serious,
Correct.
Yeah. And then you push it off. But if you really feel like something's wrong, then you keep going to that doctor, and feel like somebody
or get a new doctor is where
get a new doctor.
That's kind of where I was at. I was like, maybe my doctor sucks. Maybe I have the worst doctor on the planet, is what I was thinking.
Luckily, we live in America where you can choose different doctors, and like you should have a good relationship with your doctor. Like you should feel understood and heard, and like they should seem like a friend where you could be like honest with them. Like, hey, like I've been sucking and taking my pills, or hey, like I had the sharp pain, and they're taking you serious, because like I think we learned as well, like you have to sometimes be your own advocate, and
correct. And your doctor should advocate for you, but yes, you have to be your own advocate. Yeah.
And you know your body the best, like your doctor, like, because I think it's hard because they're a medical professional, they went to school, so of course you're like, oh, you know more than me. But with your own body, like, like, hey, I know exactly how that pain feels.
Yep.
And like you tell your doctor, and then they should help and like understand it and stuff. But like sometimes doctors don't know everything. Even with our condition, we learn stuff every time we go, because they're doing more research and more studies on it, because things are changing. It's presented different in people, what medication will help the heart more. Maybe we need more ones that relax instead of lowering the pressure. And so they're constantly learning. And so I think you also have to be patient with that, like, hey, like what I was told here was good, but now because research is different, or maybe my stage is different.
You have to look at it from another angle. Yeah.
Like just listen to your doctor, but also know like, hey, like if your doctor's not listening to you, like please leave. And we've heard a lot of stories through like our HeartCharged community where people were like, yeah, I went to the doctor, I got misdiagnosed, or like they weren't taking me serious, and then luckily like they were able to detect it in enough time, because like like they're what I mean, like in that time, if you didn't get checked, like if I would have continued playing sports, I could have easily,
you could have collapsed,
because I didn't get checked or do it. And so like that's how someone big is watching you upstairs, making sure that like, hey, I'm ignorant right now, I don't know what's going on, but he's making sure that you're safe, because he knows you have no idea what's going on.
You make a very good point when you say, I've always been very in tune with my body. I'm so in tune with my body. I can tell you when I take a certain vitamin, even multivitamins, like I can tell you how I feel and how that affects me, whether it be digestion or whatever it may be. I'm so in tune with my body, and I have been for years. I've always been able to really tell when something's wrong. I can tell you when I'm getting sick. I can tell you, like, there's just certain things I know my body does, and I'm dead on in tune with it. And like you said about misdiagnosis, a doctor is just a doctor. And as we know, medicine changes, like you said. A doctor today that read a health journal and in their specialty over the past 10 years has been the static thing for that specialty. You can go to a new doctor who studied new stuff and new techniques and new perspectives into medicine or different scientific research, and that doctor is going to have a whole different look at it. And if you have a good doctor that's advocating for your health, they're going to stay obviously up to par on this stuff. But medicine does change, just like science. We find all the time that science says one thing, and then a year later they're like, oh, whoops, we were wrong. So this is what went on. Misdiagnosing is probably one of the scariest things, I would think, because like you said, had you guys not been misdiagnosed properly, where would you be now? That's the scariest part. I'm a Christian, I believe in God, and I know in my life, it's 100% God made the changes in my life and helped me make the changes. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't be here at all if it wasn't for God's presence in my life and me having faith that I could make it through these challenges.
Oh, for sure. I even remember like leading up because as I had said before, I was like, okay, I'm going to dance with Miami City Ballet, pre-professional. I'm leaving high school. I'm going to do my dream, like full-time, 6 days a week. And Hannah just got diagnosed. I just started this new program, and I'm literally like, I remember being like on my knees, like every day leading up to that appointment, praying like, please, I don't want to have HCM, like please, please, please. And I kept getting this feeling like, you're going to have it, but everything's going to be okay. And
Yep.
like right there, that was just like setting me up for like what's going to happen. And I feel extremely grateful for having this condition, like still getting to be out there and do what I love and like help other people. It's amazing and stuff. But like right there, talking to God was like life changing. Like he's listening to me, he's watching over for me, but he has a plan and like everything's in place.
There's a lot of people, I think, you know, and obviously being a Christian and having faith in God. I mean, other people have their own beliefs, but it's very telling. It's really telling, at least in my experience, my relationship with God, the things he's done in my life. But had I not had, it's interesting, I guess, that had I not had God in my life, what would my perspective have been? And you hear, you know, obviously you can hear all the horror stories about, you know, some guy got diagnosed with something and he killed himself, or some guy got diagnosed with something and he went off the bender and went drinking, or, you know, for me, it was, I think and I wasn't at that time, I was kind of broken spiritually at the time that all this was going on. So I guess what it did is it kind of brought me closer to God, or it kind of opened that door where God was like, hey, if this is what it takes for me to get your attention, this is what it's going to be. And this is how you're going to live. And this is, you know, you're going to have to make these changes if you want to survive. And most importantly, I think what I got out of it now, being stronger in faith, being stronger spiritually, I find that what it did is it reconfirmed with me that God's never left my side. It reconfirmed with me that God, you know, while as humans, we may be not perfect, it proved to me that God's creations are perfect. Like even with me having a defect, or having a medical condition, God created me exactly who I am and what I am, and it is perfect. And I think it took me a while to really get that perspective, because really when I first got diagnosed, thinking I was going to have open heart surgery, I potentially would never see my son. I could die on the operating table, or I could make it 2-3 years with valves, or less or more. And so it really became a dark time in my life, and it really, I think, brought into perspective, like, God doesn't make mistakes. You know, a health condition that we're born with genetically isn't a mistake God did. If anything, it's actually God bringing his work and being able to utilize you guys, being able to utilize me to express, and like you're already doing, you're forming a community. So God's using you guys to really bring together some knowledge and resources and education for this issue.
I love that.
Yeah, we 100% agree. Like God doesn't make any mistakes, and like you see, like every day in your life that like God loves you, like he's a loving Father for you. Like he, you know, I think sometimes in your life you have to get thrown down, and brings you to your knees, because when you're on your knees, you're looking up. You know, like when you're hit rock bottom, the only way is up, and that's when you realize, like, hey God, like I need you. I can't do this by myself. And I think, you know, being able to have that and that faith, and knowing that you're never alone, like even through the hardest of times. Like we're actually coming up, so it's been almost 5 years, so like October 23rd, I went to the doctors in 2015 December, a checkup. It had been 6 months since I got my defibrillator implanted, so it was just a checkup to see how everything had been. And so they run a scan of it, and they go, and then my doctor's like, oh, okay, so you were shocked October 23rd at 3:30.
Yeah, because the defibrillator logs all that stuff. They can see all that, right? Yeah.
Like any little beat, if it goes off, if it paces you. And so, you know, doing my research, because I'd also like do presentations to people to kind of explain, like, hey, you know, you might need a defibrillator. I have one. What does that look like? You know, what does that mean? And then I was like, oh, like paced, because I'm thinking, like, I haven't felt myself get shocked. Like I would know, because people are like, it feels like a horse kicking you in the chest. So I'm like, yeah, I didn't feel that recently. So she's like, no, like legitimately shocked. And even my doctor, who I don't know what religion is like, thank God you got it, because literally you would have been dead in your sleep, because my heartbeat went from 50 beats, you know, resting with medication, to 256 for no unknown.
While sleeping.
while sleeping.
That's crazy.
And they're telling me I can't play sports, and like that really threw me off because I was like, I can't even sleep either because my heart is crazy stuff, and I'm like, am I safe anywhere or whatever? And like that like really threw me because I'm here like a 17-year-old kid thinking, oh my gosh, my parents would have found me dead in the morning if I didn't have this defibrillator. And then being like, wow, like, and that's when I knew that like God and like Jesus Christ or Savior, like he truly is my Savior, and he saved my life like multiple times, not only spiritually but physically, knowing that, hey, luckily my aunt found out, and then I found out, and though my life had to change and my dreams that I had, you know, I had to completely erase and do something else. Like, I'm so grateful because I'm alive today. And like, so we like are now embracing as like the didn't die day, like how grateful for we are, and like that gratitude, you know, is the best attitude to have towards the conditions, and knowing like God didn't make a mistake. He knew exactly that we needed these conditions because it would make us the best person we could be. You know, it would grow us and like push us in ways we could never expect, but would, you know, help us be.
It kind of brings you to a point where you're like, you know, some people go through their whole life and they're like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to be here for? It's almost as if God immediately had a plan for you guys and said, you know what? I made you, you're perfect, and here's my plan for you. It's going to be difficult, but we're going to get through it. But you're going to be able to advocate, and I'm going to be able to use you for my purpose to bring glory to me, but also for you guys to be able to bring awareness and education to people.
Exactly. I always say, I feel like God gave us like these heart conditions, these trials, because like at the end of the day, I think he knew we could handle it, and like that we could be like the ones like do these incredible things. Like, I don't think it was a mistake. Like,
it never. I don't think any of these things, you know, I know in my heart as a Christian that there's just no mistake in God, what God's doing. And that's in everything in creation, everything that God has created. There's no mistakes. It's all perfect. It's meant to be perfect. The only thing that makes it imperfect is human nature and a bad heart, you know. But everything that God's made, it's got a purpose. You know, the weirdest and ugliest creations you see that you kind of look at and like, what was God thinking then? Those are perfect. Those are the things that really bring out the best in what God created. So it's just one of those things. I don't know. I think faith has always helped me get through a lot of stuff, and faith has really encouraged me to not give up, to not walk away from things that were hard, that made me actually work harder to force my way through them. And I've dealt with a lot of different struggles in my life, and I've never backed down. I've never stopped and said, you know what, enough's enough, I give up. And I think this you guys are a prime example of that. I mean, you guys are really strong. You're showing exactly what it's going to take to get through this, and hopefully that continues to set an example for others.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
So is there, real quick, I'm going to wrap up, but is there anything, do you guys have a website, organization, anywhere you want to go ahead and just let our audience know that we can get a hold of you guys and support?
Yeah, so everybody, we have our Instagram is our big thing. It's at HeartCharged is the username, so HeartCharged. Yeah, if you type that in, you can find us. But that's our big, where we're kind of gathering people right now, is Instagram right now, and it's been amazing. And it's not just for heart patients. Like, we have so many people that aren't heart patients on there, so everybody please join. It's just bringing that awareness, because you never know who that could help, or like you seeing it and then telling somebody about it could lead to something else. So it's just building that huge community for everybody. I feel like it's a huge place to gather for everyone, heart condition or not.
Yeah, somebody you could know, or somebody they could know that just has access to the group should be able to, you know, get in touch or share, somebody that might just recently get diagnosed around them. So yeah, for sure.
Exactly. And we're young and we're fun, so it's not like a boring account.
There you go.
Facts and statistics.
We're fun, we promise.
We promise you'll be entertained if you follow us.
Yeah, unlike old people like me, you know, so you know, us old people, we're just, you know, whatever. But no, you guys really, you're a real encouragement, and you guys need to keep up doing what you're doing. What I'm going to do with, you know, obviously our audience is listening and they're going to hear this, and what we're going to do is get this posted on all our platforms to give it, we're heard globally. So you guys, this message will be spread globally. And the other thing we'll do is I'll shoot you guys a copy once I get it all edited. But I'll tag all the information for people to reach you, and we'll circulate this several times across our platforms and our website. And that way you guys are getting a little more coverage, hopefully, and bringing more awareness. Whatever we can do to support you guys, you let us know. In the future, call us, give us an update. You guys can come back on the show in a couple months, a year, whatever you want to do. If you want to come regularly and give us updates, you have my contact info. You can call or contact us anytime and say, hey, we'd like to be on the show. We have a big announcement or something. We'd love to have you on. Okay.
Yes. We really appreciate this, because that was the whole reason why we did matchmaker.com, is to get out there, because we're honestly, anybody who will hear us speak, we want to go
for sure. And I do business promotion. I mean, I do all kinds of different things where usually most of my guest interviews that I end up doing, we promote them. So I don't just take your interview, post it on my thing, and then ignore what goes on with it. What I end up doing is I'll put it on our YouTube. I put it across all platforms that we do, and we're heard on Apple Podcasts, we're heard on Google Podcasts, we're on every podcast. If you can find audio on a phone or on a device, we're on it. We're on almost every website socially. I share this on my personal pages. I share this on our business pages. I share it within our local community. So you guys will get a lot of coverage. That's just kind of what I do. All right.
Great.
You guys have a great day. Go ahead.
Oh, so I was going to say, because we really appreciate this as well, because this month is Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month. So we have a lot we have even a video that I got caught of me getting shocked in my device. So we have a lot of good content. So we really appreciate it. It was the perfect timing. So
is that the video that's on the YouTube page?
No. So this video we're gonna release it on Instagram to kind of show the unveiling of it.
Okay.
It's me and my family and friends, because it happened a few years ago. But it's basically me lip syncing Celine Dion's All by Myself, but getting my defibrillator while doing it. So it's kind of interesting.
Once you guys release that, let me know, and we'll tag that into all of the information as well, so we can update our information, and it'll also have that link for people to go check out and share. All right.
Thank you so much.
You guys have an awesome day. And again, I'm praying for you. Prayers are always with you. God's always looking out. And again, reach out anytime. If you have updates, if something changes, go ahead and reach out. We'll do this again. All right.
Thank you so much.
You guys have a great day.
You too. Okay.